Hello everyone, and welcome back to RealFear Files. Today, I'm bringing you 9 unsettling stories from the Pacific Northwest Trail, where ancient forests hide secrets far darker than most imagine. In this episode, we'll step into the shadowed wilderness and explore real accounts from hikers and backpackers who encountered things that defied all logic. Each story has been carefully rebuilt from first-hand testimonies, trail reports, and the chilling memories of those who barely made it back. Some names and details have been changed for privacy, but the core of every experience remains authentic. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe to RealFear Files for daily true horror content. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode as the shadows grow deeper and the stories grow darker. Story 1. Now, let's drop straight into the Pacific Northwest, where the trails twist deeper than any map dares to show, and where some trips don't end the way they're supposed to. This all went down 3 years back, when I was 26, and honestly thought I had the whole Olympic National Park figured out. My name's Evan, and I'd been running around those woods since I was a kid. I grew up in Port Angeles, right above the park, and spent nearly every free weekend during college stomping through those old, moss-soaked forests. By the time this happened, I'd racked up over 200 miles on different trails. I thought I was smart, careful, ready for anything the trees threw at me. I was dead wrong. It was late October, that weird in-between season when the summer tourists are long gone, but the winter storms aren't quite crashing in yet. The woods feel different during that stretch. The air gets sharper. The sunlight drops low and cold. You can walk for days without passing another human being. And honestly, that's exactly what I wanted. I just wrapped up a brutal month at my software job, staring at monitors 12 hours a day, and my brain felt fried. I needed noise-free air. I needed to hear something besides keyboards and traffic. So I planned a 3-day solo backpacking trip on a route I'd done twice before. Challenging, but familiar. Safe, or so I told myself. I signed in at the ranger station Thursday morning. Ranger Hale, who'd known me for years, was filling out my permit. He casually mentioned something odd, something I brushed off like an idiot at the time. "We've gotten a few reports lately," he said. "Hikers hearing voices, like conversations, but with nobody around." I shrugged it off, cracked a joke. Forest acoustics are weird, right? Wind can sound like talking. Water can sound like whispering. Animals can make noises that'll curl your toes. I thanked him for the heads up, swung on my pack, and walked straight into the trees. Day 1 was perfect. Cool air, clear sky. I moved fast, knocking out 12 miles before stopping at a camp by a small lake. I filtered water, ate dinner, and watched the sun drop behind the ridge. The whole sky turned orange and purple, colors no phone camera could ever do justice. By 9, I was zipped inside my sleeping bag, reading by my headlamp. Tired in the best way. Peaceful. Fully unplugged for the first time in weeks. And that's when I heard voices. At first I told myself it was nothing, just a soft murmur drifting through the dark. It sounded like people talking far away, too faint to catch any actual words. I killed my headlamp and listened harder. The sound was still there. East side of my camp, maybe 100 yards out. My first thought? Other campers. The site could hold multiple tents, even if I'd seen no one earlier. Maybe someone else wandered in late. I called out, "Hey, anyone out there?" The voices stopped instantly, like someone hit mute. Silence pressed back in. Only the gentle splash of the lake. I waited for a reply. Nothing. I sat there listening for 5 long minutes, then talked myself into believing it was wind or water messing with my ears. Eventually, I curled back into my sleeping bag. I slept, but the sleep was thin and sweaty, the kind you keep waking up from. Day 2 started normal. I packed up at dawn and hit the trail again. The morning climb was rough, steep switchbacks through dark timber, but I'd done it before and knew what to expect. My boots hit the dirt at a steady rhythm. My breath came out in clouds. A crow called somewhere above me. Everything felt normal. Until it didn't. Around lunchtime, I stopped for water. That's when I heard the voices again. Clearer this time. Still far, still impossible to understand, but absolutely 100% human sounding. Or close to human.
There was something off about the cadence, like hearing a conversation in a language you don't know. You pick up the rise and fall, but the meaning slips right past you. The voices were coming from my left, moving through the trees at the same pace I was walking. Staying hidden, staying distant, almost like shadowing me. I scanned the forest, but all I saw were thick trunks, tangled brush, and dark pockets where sunlight couldn't reach. Nothing moved, nothing flashed. No bright jackets, no hikers, no one. Maybe there was a side trail I didn't know about. Maybe sound was bouncing weird. Maybe I was dehydrated. I didn't believe any of it, but I wanted to. I kept hiking, faster now, and the voices kept matching me. If I stopped, they stopped. If I moved, they moved. Always hovering at the same distance. After an hour, my nerves were shredded. Whatever was out there, it wasn't normal, and it sure as hell wasn't friendly. Around mid-afternoon, I ran into 2 day hikers, a middle-aged couple coming downhill. They looked tired and out of their depth, but they were the first people I'd seen in almost 24 hours. I asked if they'd seen anyone ahead of them, or heard anything weird. "Like what?" the woman asked. "Like voices," I said. "Talking, off the trail." Both of them shook their heads. "We haven't seen a soul," the man said. "You're the first person we've passed." We chatted a bit about trail conditions, then moved on. For a moment, I felt calmer. Reality re-anchored itself. But 10 minutes after I left them, the voices came back. By the time I made camp that second night, I was strung out and jumpy. The voices had been following me for hours, getting louder, clearer, closer, but still impossible to fully understand. I pitched my tent in a tiny clearing, grabbed firewood, even though I almost never made fires on solo trips, and tried to calm my brain. I kept telling myself there had to be a normal explanation. But darkness fell fast, and the voices came from every direction, north, south, east, west, like I was sitting in the middle of a party full of people I couldn't see. The volume rose and fell, rising like waves, fading, then rising again. Sometimes almost understandable, sometimes just murmurs. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone and hit record. 3 minutes. 3 horrible, suffocating minutes. Then I played it back. Only crackling fire. My breath. Nothing else. The voices I heard so clearly didn't exist on the recording. That's when fear split open inside me. Whatever this was, it wasn't human, and it wasn't sound. I tried recording again. Same outcome. Fire, breathing, silence. No voices at all. But in the real world, outside the phone, the voices kept circling me. Sliding around the clearing in impossible patterns. 1 second in front of me, then behind me, then to my left. No footsteps, no crunching brush, no movement. Just instant relocation.
Then the temperature collapsed. I swear the air dropped 20 degrees in under a minute. My breath turned white in the firelight. A thick, crawling mist slithered low across the ground from every direction, swallowing the edges of the clearing. The voices grew louder, closer. The cadence bending into almost words, like someone trying to talk with a mouthful of stones. Then it said my name, my real name. Evan. Right behind me, close enough that I felt warm breath on the back of my neck. I spun around. Nothing there. Just mist and black trees. 3 seconds later, the same voice, same tone, same pitch, but from the opposite direction. Evan. Then it repeated something else. A sentence I'd said earlier to Ranger Hale. The same rhythm, the same pause, the same tone. My own voice echoing through the woods. My chest locked up. My brain went static. Something out there had been listening to me all day, recording me, practicing me. And now it was using my words like a puppet show in the dark. Survival instinct hit me like a truck. No logic, no planning, just pure animal panic. I grabbed my headlamp, dropped everything else, and ran. I didn't pack the tent, didn't kick dirt onto the fire, didn't grab my stove or food or anything. I just tore down the trail like something was sprinting right behind me. The voices chased me, jumping through the forest like sparks, 1 second far off, the next right beside my ear. My headlamp bobbed wildly, throwing screaming shapes across the trees. After 20 minutes of pure blind running, the voices stopped. Not faded, stopped. Cut off in a single instant. I stumbled to a halt, half expecting something to grab me out of the dark. But the woods were dead silent. No voices, no whispers, no footsteps. Nothing. That's when I noticed the old boundary marker. A weather-beaten wooden post from the earliest days of the park. Whatever those voices were, they had followed me right up to that line, and not 1 inch past it. I walked the rest of the night without stopping. My legs felt like lead, but fear kept pushing me forward. When the trailhead finally appeared at dawn, I nearly collapsed. Ranger Hale showed up at the exact same time, starting his shift. One look at me, sweat-soaked, shaking, wide-eyed, and he knew something was very wrong. He called another ranger to go grab my abandoned gear. They found everything exactly where I left it. Tent still standing, fire burned down to coals, nothing touched. No prints, no signs of animals, no other hikers, no paths through the brush. Nothing. Just my camp sitting there like time had frozen. When I tried to explain what happened, I sounded like a lunatic. Voices that weren't voices. Something copying my speech. Something moving too fast to be real. Something my phone couldn't record. Hale was gentle. He suggested exhaustion, cold exposure, maybe some bad water. I nodded, but I didn't believe a word of it. Because the voices didn't stay in the forest. They followed me home. Late at night, when my apartment is silent, I'll hear faint murmurs at the edge of hearing. Never loud, never clear, but absolutely real. I tried recording them again. Same thing, just static. But buried deep in that static, if you listen with high-end headphones, you can hear whispers. Dozens of them, talking over each other. And every once in a while, I hear my own voice mixed in. I haven't stepped foot in the Olympic woods since. Probably never will. Because after weeks of replaying everything, lying awake at 3 in the morning, I realized the truth. They weren't trying to scare me. They were learning. Learning how people talk. Learning our rhythms, our breath, our tone. Mimicking us, studying us.
Something in that forest wasn't human, but wanted to sound like one. And now it has my voice, stored somewhere I can't understand, waiting for something, preparing for something. Sometimes I lie in bed and think about how many hikers have passed through those trails over the decades. How many heard whispers and shrugged them off? How many were copied, filed away, catalogued? And what happens when this thing, whatever it is, finally perfects the imitation? When it learns enough that we can't tell the difference? I don't know. But sometimes, in the deepest part of the night, I hear my own voice whispering back to me from the dark corner of my room. And I remember this. There are older things in those forests than us, and not all of them are friendly. Some of them are listening. Some of them are learning. And some of them now speak with voices they stole from people like me. Story 2. My name is Alyssa, and whatever I saw on Mount Rainier 2 years ago completely changed the way I look at the outdoors. I was 24 back then, a wildlife photography student at the University of Washington. My whole degree was about capturing real Pacific Northwest wildlife in untouched moments, which meant spending long, quiet hours alone in deep woods with nothing but my camera and my nerves. I'd photographed black bears, cougars, elk, and more birds than I could list. I honestly thought I had seen every major creature these forests could throw at me. I was dead wrong. This happened in early November, that strange gap when fall is still hanging on, but winter hasn't locked down the mountain roads yet. I planned a sunrise shoot at a small, barely used trailhead on the east side of Rainier. The spot was deep in old-growth timber, a place almost no tourists ever see. I'd been told a small elk herd wandered through at first light, and I wanted a shot of them stepping out of the fog with the sun behind them. It was supposed to be perfect. I left Seattle at 3:30 a.m., driving through pitch-black forest roads until I reached the little gravel pullout around 5:30. Sunrise was almost 40 minutes away, giving me enough time to hike in and set up. The parking area only fit maybe 6 cars. Mine was the only one there, which I expected. People only ruin the moment when you're trying to catch wildlife doing their thing. The fog that morning was thick enough to chew. My headlights barely reached 30 feet. I grabbed my tripod, camera bag, pack, and locked the car. My breath lit up in my headlamp beam as I checked my lenses and camera settings. Everything around me was silent, except for water dripping off the branches. That's when I heard the first sound. Something big was pushing through the brush near the edge of the lot, just outside the reach of my light. My first instinct was bear. A little scary, but manageable. I had bear spray. I knew the drill. I called out loudly, "Hey, bear, just passing through." The usual warning you give so it knows you're human. The movement stopped instantly. Dead silence settled in. It didn't feel like natural silence. It felt intentional. I waited, hand resting on the bear spray. After 30 seconds, the sound started again, but different this time. Slower, more controlled. And whatever it was started pacing alongside me instead of heading away. That's when something in my gut twisted. It wasn't moving like a deer or an elk. Too heavy, too deliberate, too wrong. I kept prepping my gear, but my senses were locked on the creature in the dark. Every time I shifted my stance, it shifted too. Every time I stopped, it stopped. Its distance never changed. It stayed right at the edge of my light like it knew exactly where I couldn't see. This wasn't wildlife. Wildlife runs. This felt like something studying me. I decided I needed to see it. My camera had a strong flash, so I lifted it toward the noise and hit the shutter. The flash blew the fog apart for a split second, and I saw it. It stood between 2 massive trees maybe 40 feet away.
and instantly my mind rejected what I was looking at. This thing was at least 7.5 feet tall, maybe 8. Its torso was too long. Its arms hung too low, almost to its knees. Its legs looked thin, like they shouldn't support the weight of its upper body. Everything about its shape felt mismatched and wrong. Its skin was pale gray, way too light to belong in a forest. Not fur, not animal hide, more like cold stone with a faint shine in the mist. Smooth, but not human smooth. Something else. Then the head. God, the head. Long, narrow, with a strange protruding shape where a mouth should be. And the eyes, front-facing like a human. When the flash hit them, they glowed yellow-white, the way predators' eyes shine. This thing wasn't prey. It was looking at me the way something looks at something it's trying to figure out how to approach. The flash faded, and the darkness swallowed everything again. My whole body froze. The logical part of my brain tried to say I'd imagined it, but a deeper part, the ancient fear, knew better. That instinct was screaming at me to run. Then it made a sound. A low hum at first, almost like a vibration in the air. The pitch shifted slowly, rising and falling like some horrible tune. I felt the sound in my chest, like it was shaking something loose inside me. It didn't sound angry. It sounded curious, testing me. And then I witnessed something that nearly broke me. It started to mimic my stance. I was holding my camera up, 1 foot forward, leaning slightly. The creature shifted into the same pose. Its long arm lifted in the same angle as my camera. Its head tilted to match mine. It was copying me. Not randomly, perfectly. That was enough to break whatever freeze held me. I dropped the camera, letting it swing on its strap, and I bolted. I ran faster than I ever have, scrambling for my car, hands shaking so badly I could barely pull my keys out. Behind me, the thing crashed through the brush, no longer trying to hide its steps. I reached the car, dove inside, slammed the door, and fumbled 3 times before I finally jammed the key into the ignition. When the headlights lit up the parking area, the creature stepped out of the trees. And this time, I saw all of it. The creature stepped into the open like it had been waiting for the light to hit it. Seeing it with nothing blocking my view made my stomach twist so hard I thought I'd pass out. It was bigger than I'd guessed. Taller. Wider. Its skin wasn't smooth up close. It looked almost rubbery, with faint lines running down the surface like stretched hide. The pale gray tone made it look dead, like a corpse that had never learned how to rot. The head stayed long and narrow, the eyes glowing yellow-green in my headlights. Its arms hung low, too low, fingers almost brushing the ground. Those fingers were long, human-like, but ended in fat, blunt claws. It stepped closer, moving slow and steady, like it didn't want to scare me off. Like it was still studying me. I screamed without realizing it. My voice shook the inside of the car, but the thing didn't react. It just kept that slight head tilt, like a dog trying to understand a new sound. Finally, the engine roared to life. The creature paused at the noise, standing maybe 20 feet from my bumper. For a few seconds, it just watched me. Those eyes reflected every inch of light, drilling right into me like it was memorizing my face. Then it lifted its hand. And it waved. A slow, purposeful wave, side to side, perfectly mimicking a human gesture. That tiny movement hit harder than everything else I'd seen. Something that wasn't human was doing something only a human should do. And it knew what it meant. I threw the car into reverse so fast I almost snapped the gear. I didn't care about my tripod. I didn't care about my bag. I didn't care about anything except putting as much distance as I could between me and that nightmare. I backed up too far, nearly crunching the rear of my car into a tree, then gunned it forward, tires skidding on wet gravel.
The fog swallowed the road, the headlights bouncing wildly as I shot down the access lane like the world was collapsing behind me. I checked the rearview mirror once, only once. The creature was still standing at the edge of the parking lot, glowing faintly in my taillights, watching me leave. Not chasing, not moving. Just standing there like it understood the exact line between forest and pavement, and refused to cross it. Or worse, like it didn't need to. I made it to the ranger station in what felt like minutes, though I'm sure it was longer. The first ranger, a woman named Karen, was unlocking the door when I pulled up. I must have looked insane, sweaty, shaking, wide-eyed. I tried to explain what happened, but the words came out like scrambled static. She sat me down, got me water, and brought in her supervisor. To their credit, they didn't laugh. They didn't tell me I was imagining things. They asked questions, very specific questions, about height, shape, movement, eye shine, footprints. Almost like they already had a checklist for this exact scenario. Then they drove back with me to get my gear and investigate. My tripod and camera bag were exactly where I dropped them, but we found something else. Something that made the rangers go quiet. Footprints. Huge ones. 18 inches, maybe 19. 5 toes, but not shaped like a human foot. The toes were longer. The arch too deep. The heel too narrow. It looked like someone tried to draw a human footprint from memory and warped it. The soil around the prints was disturbed in a clear path leading deeper into the forest. The stride length was nearly 6 feet. No human alive could take steps that far apart. One of the younger rangers, Mark, looked nervous. He finally admitted, low voice, like he didn't want his boss hearing, that this wasn't the first time someone had reported a tall, pale figure in the backcountry. Maybe once every few years someone came in shaking, describing a creature with long limbs and weird proportions watching them from the trees. Always at dawn or dusk. Always in remote areas. Always at high elevation. Always in fog. He told me something that hit me like a punch to the chest. 2 years before my encounter, another photographer reported almost the exact same experience at a different trailhead about 15 miles away. That person even captured a photo. It wasn't clear, but it showed a tall, pale figure deep in the trees. The rangers had shown that image to a wildlife biologist. His response? Inconclusive, but consistent with accounts of an unidentified primate. I asked to see the photo. Mark pulled it up on his phone. Even blurry and dark, I recognized the shape. The head, the arms, the strange posture. It was the same thing I saw. What I didn't realize until we reviewed my camera later was that I had also taken a photo before I ran. I must have hit the shutter on instinct. The picture was clearer than the older one, though still foggy. But you could definitely see something tall between the trees, something with that stretched, unnatural body. That photo went through 3 experts. A primatologist said the morphology didn't match any known primate. A wildlife biologist said it didn't match any mammal in North America. A cryptozoologist said it matched a Sasquatch variant, though that term made me cringe. It made the whole thing sound fake. But I know what I saw. I saw something real, something alive, something that doesn't want to be found. I finished my degree, but I never went back alone into the woods. I never returned to that specific trailhead. I never tried to look for the creature again. Because the detail that keeps me up at night isn't the height or the skin or even the eyes. It's the mimicry. It copied how I stood, how I held my camera, how I tilted my head. It moved with perfect precision, like it had practiced before. And then, when I ran, it waved. A human gesture, from something that wasn't human.
which means this thing has been watching us for a long time. Watching hikers, watching campers, watching anyone alone in the fog. Studying how we move, how we react, what scares us. And the worst part? It's learning. I don't know what it wants. I don't know why it mimics us. I don't know what it plans to do with the knowledge it collects. All I know is this. Something pale, tall, and wrong lives in the Pacific Northwest, and it knows how to wave goodbye. Story 3. I'm 29 now, and I've been section hiking the Pacific Crest Trail for 5 years straight. The PCT runs all the way from Mexico to Canada, covering around 2,600 miles of the prettiest and nastiest wilderness this continent's got. I'd knocked out roughly 1,800 of those miles on different trips. I figured I had enough trail sense to handle whatever got thrown at me. Oregon proved me dead wrong. I was hitting a stretch of the southern Cascades, deep wilderness, all volcanic rock fields and choked pine forests. Early September. Daytime heat still lingering, nights cold enough to stiffen your fingers. The section I picked was supposed to be an easy 3-day cruise. Clear markers, solid campsites, nothing sketchy. Everything went by the book until day 2. A storm must have rolled through earlier that week, because I hit a washout the size of a crime scene. Mud, snapped trees, busted rocks, like a giant blender had torn through the hillside. The trail ahead was basically a death slide. Going around would tack 8 damn miles onto the day, and the sun was already starting its slow drop. That's when I spotted a side trail. Wasn't on my map, wasn't on my GPS, but it looked legit. Recently cleared brush, faded trail tags, beaten dirt underfoot. Maybe an alternate used by crews. Maybe locals used it. Either way, it ran the right direction and seemed to reconnect down the line. I made the choice. That choice screwed up my whole reality. The side trail was almost pleasant. Gentle grade, clean path, easier than the PCT itself. After maybe 2 miles, I walked right into a clearing with a cabin tucked inside it. It was small, maybe 20 by 20 feet. Old log walls, metal roof with rust freckles. The door hung half open, like someone left in a hurry. No smoke, no gear, no tire tracks. Just the silent kind of abandoned. I approached slow. Empty places in the woods can hide anything. Bad floors, squatters, animals with teeth they actually use. But the cabin didn't look rotten, and curiosity has always been my worst habit. I pushed the door open all the way and stepped in. Inside was weirdly spotless. No dust, no nests, no broken boards, no stink. Just a wooden table with 2 chairs, a bare metal bed frame, and a stack of spiral notebooks sitting neatly on the table like somebody placed them there yesterday. There were 5 notebooks, different colors, different sizes. I opened the first one. Handwriting filled every page. Dated entries, different handwriting styles, different people. All hikers, all describing the same thing. Finding this cabin by accident, finding the notebooks, leaving notes for whoever came next. 6 years of entries, scattered dates, random voices. Some hikers camped here, others passed through quick. But they all wrote, like the cabin made them. Like something here required a record. Then I found the newest entry, dated yesterday. My stomach dropped ice cold. The message was rushed, sloppy, letters uneven. Don't stay after dark. The trail moves. I've been trying to leave for 6 hours. Every path loops back. If you're reading this, get out while there's still light. The cabin wants you to stay. I checked my watch. 4:15 p.m. 4 hours of light left, maybe. Enough to bail out. Enough to pretend none of this was happening. I decided instantly. I was done. No curiosity, no investigation. I wanted distance between me and this cabin. I stepped outside and checked my GPS. The main PCT was about 1.5 miles east. I could bushwhack straight through and be fine. No more trails, just a compass bearing and stubborn legs.
So I aimed myself at a far-off ridge, locked my compass needle, and plunged into the forest. 45 minutes later, sweating and scratched to hell, I pushed out into a clearing. The cabin sat in the middle. Same clearing, same open door, same cabin. It felt like getting punched in the heart. I checked my compass. Straight line. Checked GPS. Straight line east. The reference peak still sat exactly where it should have been. But somehow, I'd come back. I tried again. Different direction. Northwest this time. I power walked for an hour, constant checks, constant corrections. Broke into another clearing. The cabin again. Waiting like a patient animal. Sun was dropping. Maybe 2 hours left. The notebook entry echoed in my head. The trail moves. Or worse. Maybe the world around the cabin moves. Third attempt, south this time, backtracking. I hunted for the side trail, found something that looked right, and followed it with shaky relief. 20 minutes later, the trees opened. The cabin stared at me from the clearing. I felt like screaming. 3 hours burned, 4 routes attempted. Same cursed result. Sunlight turned golden, shadows stretched. I had maybe an hour left before darkness wrapped around everything. I tried one last time, sprinting like a hunted thing. North. No trail, no plan. Just raw terror and adrenaline. Branches shredded my arms. My lungs felt like broken glass. Finally, I collapsed, half blind. I looked up. Clearing ahead. I already knew. The cabin. Always the cabin. The sun kissed the horizon. 30 minutes left. Maybe. I sat in the dirt, breathing hard, brain racing through possibilities that made no sense. GPS couldn't save me. Compass couldn't save me. The world was folding, and I was stuck in its center. I went inside and flipped through the notebooks again, desperate for something useful. Some people escaped next morning. Some stayed trapped for days. One entry said they'd been stuck 12 days before something opened. No explanations. No rules. No solution. Then the sun slipped away. Darkness settled like a wet blanket, and I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, heavy footsteps on the roof, walking from one end to the other. Back and forth. Never hurrying, never pausing. Something big. Something wrong. Metal creaked under its weight. My headlamp buzzed softly. My pulse hammered. I sat at the table the whole night, shaking, listening to the methodical pacing above me. Sometimes I crept to the doorway and angled my light up, but I never saw anything. Either the thing moved faster than the light revealed, or it wasn't the kind of thing that light could expose. It circled the roof. For hours. Endless laps. Right until dawn. The moment sunlight touched the trees, the steps stopped. Dead silent. No retreating thump. No jump. Just gone. And I didn't wait. I grabbed my pack and staggered into the forest in a random direction, picking one with no logic at all. 30 minutes later, I hit the PCT. Just like that. No loop, no distortion, just a normal trail in normal woods.
I didn't look back. I followed the PCT until I reached the nearest road crossing, then flagged a pickup like my life depended on it. A retired guy named Bill drove me into the nearest town. I must have looked insane, shaky, scraped, wild-eyed. I told the Forest Service everything. They listened politely, the way people do when they don't want to call you crazy to your face. When I offered to guide a team back, they agreed. 3 days later, we hiked in together. We never found the cabin. Not the clearing, not the side trail, not the footprint of anything human-made. My GPS coordinates led us into thick, untouched forest that looked like it had never been stepped in. No cabin, no roof, no signs of any structure ever being there. But I had proof. My own notebook entry. Before leaving the cabin that morning, I'd added one more story to the stack. I'd taken a photo of my handwritten page with my phone. That picture still sits in my gallery. My handwriting, my date, my message. The notebooks are gone, but my entry exists. I finished the PCT the next year, but I never again trusted any side path that didn't appear on a real map. I stick to official signs, nothing else. Because whatever I found in those woods wasn't a normal place. I think about that cabin. A trap disguised as shelter. A structure that bends space, draws people in, keeps them looping back like a spider web stitched through reality. Something walks that roof at night. Something heavy. Something patient. And through late-night deep dives online, I learned I'm not alone. Other hikers, scattered across forums, describe the same impossible loop. Same notebooks, same footsteps overhead. A few of those posters never replied again. Their last messages read a lot like the notebooks I found. Warnings. Panic. Farewell entries. I don't know where those notebooks are now. I don't know where the cabin sits when it chooses to appear. But I'm sure it's still out there, waiting for the next hiker who takes the wrong trail at the wrong hour. The trail moves, the cabin keeps you. And some places in the deep woods follow laws we don't have names for. Places that don't show up on any map. Places that don't let you go. Story 4. My name's Charlotte, and I'm 31. What I went through on the Timberline Trail on Mount Hood 3 summers back has completely warped the way I see the world. I don't use words like that lightly. I'm a registered nurse. Facts, evidence, observable reality, that's my comfort zone. But what I witnessed out there? Nothing in medicine or science even comes close to explaining it. It was early June, peak hiking season in the Northwest. My boyfriend, Dylan, and I were planning a 2-day backpacking loop around the Timberline Trail, a 40-mile circuit circling Mount Hood at elevations between 3,000 and 7,000 feet. Forecast looked perfect. Snow had mostly melted off the lower sections. We were both experienced enough to handle moderate terrain. We hit the trail from Timberline Lodge's parking lot around 8 a.m., joining the stream of hikers and backpackers heading out. The trail was busy but well kept, and groups passed us regularly. Felt safe. Social. Friendly smiles, casual "morning" calls back and forth. This was the kind of hike where you felt part of a bigger outdoor family. Then, around noon, we saw her. A lone woman hiking downhill while we were ascending. I'd guess late 50s, maybe early 60s. Gray hair and a tight ponytail. But her clothing stopped me cold. Vintage hiking gear, straight out of the 1970s. Bell-bottom jeans, a faded orange windbreaker I recognized from old photos, and scuffed leather boots that hadn't been made in decades. "Excuse me," she said as we stepped aside. "Can you tell me how to get to Paradise Lodge? My husband is waiting." Dylan and I exchanged confused looks. Paradise Lodge? I asked. You mean Timberline Lodge? That's where we started this morning, about 4 miles back. She shook her head. Frustration etched across her face. No, Paradise Lodge, just over the ridge. Jim is waiting for lunch. Dylan tried gently. Are you sure? There's no Paradise Lodge here. Maybe you mean Paradise Inn on Mount Rainier, about 100 miles north. Her face crumpled, panic rising. But Jim's waiting. I've been walking all morning. How did I get so lost? Something about her screamed alarm. She wasn't just confused. Not dehydration, not dementia alone. Something else was off. Dylan handed her water. I pulled out some trail mix. Sit down for a minute. Hydrate. She reached for the bottle, and her hand passed straight through it. Not around, not knocking it aside. Through it, like air. Dylan and I froze, staring. My brain refused to process it. She looked at her hand, equally shocked, then tried again more carefully. This time, she grasped the bottle, but her grip looked unsure, like the object might vanish. She drank a little, handed it back, and got up. I should keep looking for Jim, she said, her voice trembling. Thanks. She moved down the trail, her gait slightly wrong, like she wasn't fully touching the ground. Dylan and I stood silent. Did you see that? I whispered. Yeah, he said, but his voice lacked conviction, like he was already rationalizing it away. Maybe it was a trick of the light. We kept hiking, but I couldn't shake her from my mind. Something was profoundly wrong. Not just the retro clothes, not just the confusion. In hindsight, I realized her figure had been faintly translucent in sunlight. Her footsteps made no sound. An hour later, we passed her again, coming uphill, same direction as us. Geography made no sense. The trail didn't loop. She would have had to circle through impossible terrain at her age and apparent condition. Have you seen the lodge? She asked again, like it was the first time. Paradise Lodge? Jim's waiting. We talked to you an hour ago, I said. She blinked, blank. I don't think so. I haven't seen anyone for hours. I just want to find Jim. Dylan snapped a photo, saying he wanted to show rangers in case she was missing. She smiled sadly and walked past. 2 hours later, third encounter. Same trail, same questions, same clothes. My skin crawled. Sunlight filtered through trees, and I saw it clearly. Her body was slightly see-through, like trees behind her blurred through her form. Misty, unreal. What's your name? I asked, voice shaking. Sarah, she said. Sarah Mitchell. Have you seen my husband? I lost him near the lodge. Dylan pulled me aside. Something's very wrong. I want out. Now. We were miles from the trailhead. No easy exit. Decided to push to the campsite and leave at first light. That evening, we found her one last time, sitting on a log, quietly crying. I've been lost so long, she said. I just want to go home. I want to find Jim. I sat nearby, careful not to touch her. Sarah, what year do you think it is? She sniffled, red-eyed. 1979. August 1979. We came up for our anniversary. 25 years married. Her face began to fade, more translucent as she spoke. I think I've been lost longer than I thought, she whispered. Sarah, it's 2022, I said softly. Her eyes widened. She stared at her hands, which were fading in the evening light. That's impossible, she breathed. I've been out here. She couldn't finish.
"Tell Jim I tried," she said, voice fading. "Tell him I tried so hard." And then she vanished. Not walking, not running. Just disappeared over 30 seconds until there was nothing but empty trail and shadows. Dylan and I barely slept that night. At first light, we hiked out, moving as fast as possible. When we hit Timberline Lodge, I went straight to the ranger station. I asked if they had any records for a missing hiker named Sarah Mitchell from 1979. The ranger, an older man who had worked there for decades, went pale. He pulled out a yellowed file. Sarah Mitchell, 56, disappeared on Timberline Trail, August 1979. She and her husband Jim had been hiking together and separated in the fog. Jim searched 3 weeks, never found her body. He died in 2008, still haunted by questions. The ranger pulled up Dylan's photo. I stared. In the image, I stood on the trail, arm extended like I was gesturing, but no one was there. No orange windbreaker, no Sarah, just me, alone. And yet, we both saw her, spoke to her, watched her fade. The ranger said we weren't the first. Over decades, hikers reported seeing a confused older woman in vintage 70s gear on Timberline Trail, always asking about Paradise Lodge, always searching for Jim. Sarah Mitchell is still out there, lost, looping, stuck between times, retracing the same hike endlessly. Sometimes aware of decades passing, sometimes trapped in August 1979, convinced Jim waits just over the next ridge. I think about her often. I think about Jim, searching for decades, never knowing she lingered in a form he couldn't perceive. I think about every hiker over the years who brushes her off as imagination, sunstroke, fatigue. But I know. Sarah Mitchell is walking Timberline Trail, still searching, still lost, still trying to reach Jim. Some people get lost in ways that don't end, ways that transcend life and time. They linger in the spaces between what is and what was. Trails aren't always empty. Sometimes they're haunted by those who can't leave, tethered to the place they disappeared. Sometimes, for brief, terrible moments, the living share a path with the dead, separated only by decades. Sarah is still out there, forever, searching for a lodge that never existed, waiting for a husband long gone, a permanent ghost on a mountain that won't let her rest. Story 5. My name is William, and I'm 34. For the past 8 years, I've been a Forest Service technician for the U.S. Forest Service, tasked with checking and maintaining weather monitoring stations tucked deep in the North Cascades. It's lonely work, often requiring multi-day hikes into stretches of wilderness where few humans ever tread. Honestly, that's exactly how I like it. The quiet, the isolation, the feeling that civilization is miles away. But everything changed after what happened at Station 7 last year. After that, I transferred to office work. I haven't returned to the deep woods since, and I don't ever plan to. Station 7 sits in one of the most cut-off valleys in the Cascades. You have to grind through an 8-mile hike from the nearest forest road just to reach it. The station itself is a tiny cabin, barely 10 by 10 feet, built in the 80s. Its job? House the weather monitoring equipment and serve as an emergency refuge if something goes sideways during maintenance. Solar panels feed the equipment, batteries keep it running, and data zips back to headquarters via satellite. Normally, this place needs attention about every 3 months. Equipment inspections, battery swaps, clearing off snow or debris, the usual. In early October last year, Station 7 went dark. The last satellite ping came 2 weeks earlier. Then nothing. Radio silence. Not unheard of.
Wildlife sometimes chews on wires. Storms knock panels loose. Technical glitches happen. My job was simple. Hike in, figure out the problem, and get the station back online. I grabbed my maintenance kit on a Thursday morning, packed my backpack with tools and supplies, and started the hike. The air was crisp, the sky clear. A perfect day for work. By late afternoon, I reached the clearing around the cabin. That's when I saw it. The door was barricaded from the inside. Wooden boards nailed tight across the frame. Nobody should have been here. This place is usually deserted. "Forest Service," I called, my voice echoing. "Anybody inside?" Only silence answered, along with the soft hiss of wind through the trees. I had no choice but to break in. I pulled a pry bar from my bag, wiggled the boards loose, and pushed the door open. Inside, chaos. The monitoring gear had been torn apart. Screens were smashed, cables ripped free, solar batteries yanked from their mounts. Deep gouges scored the walls, claw-like marks frenzied across the wood. But they weren't random, too precise, too deliberate. Something had gone through this methodically, like it had a plan. On the small table in the corner, a journal caught my eye. It belonged to the previous technician, a guy named Carson, someone I'd met at HQ. He had been scheduled to service Station 7 6 weeks ago. Officially, he'd checked in by radio, reported all systems normal, and left 3 days later. But the journal told a different story. The early entries were typical: equipment notes, weather logs, routine checks. But on day 4, things went sideways. Heard footsteps on the roof last night, heavy pacing for hours. Went outside at dawn, no tracks, no evidence, nothing. Day 7, footsteps again, every night, same route. Back and forth across the metal roof, turning, repeating until sunrise. What walks a roof like this? By day 10, time itself seemed wrong. My watch says 10 days here. Satellite logs say 3. GPS confirms the date, but I know I've been here longer. I've counted the sunrises. By day 15, the footsteps weren't just above. They seemed aware of him. They stop right over where I sit. When I move, they follow, tracking me. Day 23. Escape attempts. Hiked for 6 hours, tried to leave, always ended back at the cabin. The valley won't let me go. GPS shows I'm moving, but I'm back. Everything circles here. Cabin is the center. Everything leads back. Day 31. The footsteps moved inside his mind. I hear them when it's silent. I feel them when I close my eyes. Pacing. Always pacing. Wearing a groove into my skull. The final entry, day 47. Handwriting shaky. It's not time that stopped. I'm not allowed to leave yet. Whatever walks the roof at night, it has a reason. When it finishes studying me, maybe then I can tell my family I tried. Tell them, I'm sorry. I read these words, heart hammering. Carson had been trapped here for 47 days, tormented by something walking the roof every night. And yet, I had seen him back at HQ. He filed reports, seemed normal, went back to his life. If this journal was real, how did he escape? Or had he? My watch read 4:30 p.m. 2 hours of daylight left, tops. Every instinct screamed to hike out immediately, abandon the mission. But if I left now, I'd never make it to my truck before dark. Hiking in the shadows up here would be a death trap. I made a choice I'd regret. Spend the night, leave at first light, and report what I'd seen. Just survive one night. I gathered firewood, mostly for comfort, not warmth, and barricaded the door with the same boards Carson had used. My sleeping bag spread out, I knew I wouldn't sleep. Headlamp on, journal open, I waited for nightfall. At 8:45 p.m. sharp, the footsteps began. Heavy, methodical, on the metal roof above me. Front to back to front, a 10-foot circuit. Pause, then reverse. Over and over. The roof groaned under their weight. My heart thumped so hard I thought it would burst. I stayed frozen, listening. After an hour, I forced myself outside, flashlight sweeping the roof. Nothing. Empty metal. Yet the steps continued, audible, distinct, moving over nothing. No source, no shadow, just the sound. I retreated inside, re-barricaded the door. The pacing went on all night, relentless, precise. By 3 a.m., the steps stopped right above me, inches above. I felt it, a consciousness, aware, studying me like a lab specimen. Then the rhythm resumed, front to back to front, until dawn's first gray light touched the roof. Silence. I shook, exhausted, barely functioning. I packed my gear and hiked out. 6 grueling hours, following the trail, praying daylight held. I reached my truck, locked the doors, and sat breathing, alive. Unlike Carson, I got out in one night. But when HQ showed me my GPS, my blood ran cold. The GPS data froze me in disbelief. Every 10 minutes, my location had been logged. According to it, I'd hiked 47 miles during that 6-hour escape. 47 miles. I had walked in massive loops, doubling back over myself, tracing the same trails repeatedly, even though I'd been following the path directly. 47. Exactly the number of days Carson claimed he'd been trapped. Then the timestamps hit me. My watch said 6 hours. GPS said 3 days. 3 days vanished somewhere between the cabin and my truck. It wasn't lost time. It had happened, just folded, compressed, or stretched in a way that made no sense. Time here didn't obey the rules. Weeks later, HQ sent a team back. I refused to go. They found the cabin exactly as I'd described. The wrecked equipment, the gouged walls, Carson's journal. But the weirdness? Nothing. No footsteps. No time distortion. They spent 2 nights, hiked out normally, covering the 8 miles in the expected time. The station was quietly decommissioned. Equipment wasn't replaced. The valley vanished from rotation. Officially, it was unsuitable for continued operation. But I knew better. That valley, it was wrong. Time twisted there. Space didn't behave. Something lived there. Something that walked the roof at night, keeping people trapped in loops they couldn't break. Carson endured 47 days, officially recorded as 3. I endured 3 days, but I felt 6 hours. Even now, long after leaving, the footsteps haunt me. Late at night, in my apartment, I hear them pacing across the ceiling. Front to back to front, over and over, the same rhythm, the same weight, as if whatever stalked that roof followed me home. Sometimes, I swear I can feel it watching, measuring, waiting. I don't venture into the wilderness anymore. I sit at a desk, processing reports and juggling logistics. Safe, ordinary work. But the truth sits with me, heavy as iron. There are places in these mountains that don't obey the rules. Time bends. Space folds. Something exists alongside reality, patient, eternal, observing anyone foolish enough to step into its domain. Station 7 still stands, The cabin waits. And something, whatever walks the roof, still waits. Waiting for the next person, the next explorer, the next technician, the next hapless wanderer to stumble into its experiment, to be trapped, studied, measured, endlessly. I escaped. Or at least, I think I did. Part of me wonders if I ever really left. Some nights, when the world is quiet, I close my eyes and I'm back at that table. Counting steps, listening. Trapped in that loop, watching the metal roof, feeling the weight of those impossible footsteps pacing above. A moment repeating forever while the rest of the world moves on. After reporting my experience, HQ handled it quietly. Reports filed, GPS data logged, station decommissioned. Nothing more said. The official line, technical failure, natural wear, human error. No mention of the gouged walls. No acknowledgement of the journal. No explanation for the missing time. They didn't want anyone asking questions. I think they were afraid of the valley itself. And they should be. That place is alive in a way I can't explain. It's a loop, a pocket outside normal reality. Time is elastic. Footsteps that should have weight disappear. Consciousness becomes a plaything. It doesn't just haunt you, it studies you. Like a scientist examining a specimen, relentlessly, without mercy, until it's finished. I sometimes replay my escape in my mind. Every turn on the trail, every loop I didn't know I was making. Every hour stretching into days. The valley didn't want me to leave. I fought it, fought the pull, the compulsion, the rhythm of the unseen steps. And I won. Barely. But the valley still owns a piece of me. A piece that will never return. A loop lodged in my mind. People think I exaggerate when I tell the story. They say it's stress, isolation, exhaustion, maybe a touch of paranoia. But I know what I felt. I know the sound of something impossible walking just above my head, pacing, patient, eternal. I know what it's like to see time bend and stretch around you like a living thing. I know what it feels like to be trapped in a place that refuses to release you, no matter how badly you want to escape. Even now, when the apartment is silent and I sit at my desk, I hear them sometimes. Just faint, soft, precise. Front to back to front, over and over. And I remember the metal roof, the gouged walls, Carson's journal, the night that stretched and twisted into a nightmare of sound and time. I don't go into the wilderness anymore. I don't hike. I don't wander. I stick to roads, to buildings, to places where time and space behave. But I know the truth. There are pockets out there, places where reality itself bends, where something inhuman walks the roof at night, studying, trapping, measuring. And it waits. Always waits. Station 7 may be abandoned now, but it's still alive in its own terrifying way. The cabin is still there, standing among the trees, silently observing the valley it owns. And I know, with the deepest part of me, that whoever goes in next will encounter the same relentless rhythm. They'll hear the steps. They'll feel the presence. They'll be trapped in a loop that isn't meant to end. I escaped, yes. But sometimes I question that. When I close my eyes at night, I feel the pacing above me, precise and unyielding. I wonder if, in some sense, I never left that cabin at all. If part of me is still there, trapped in that valley where time is elastic, where space folds over itself, and something watches, endlessly. I got out, but part of me will always be there, sitting at that table, counting footsteps, listening to a rhythm that never stops. A moment that loops forever, while the rest of the world moves on, unaware. And I know, if anyone else ever sets foot in that valley, the cabin, the valley, and the unseen watcher will still be there, waiting, pacing, watching.
Story 6. My name's Amelia. I'm 27. What happened to me at Crater Lake National Park in Oregon a couple of years ago completely flipped my understanding of reality. I was on a backpacking trip with my two best friends, Marcus and Jenny. Both are seasoned hikers, and we've spent years trekking the Pacific Northwest together. We've faced storms, gotten lost for hours, survived rough nights out, and that trust we've built is the only reason I'm confident what we saw that August night wasn't some mass hallucination. We had permits for a backcountry site along the Crater Lake rim, about 2 miles from the nearest trailhead. It was midsummer, warm days, cool nights, skies so clear the stars felt within reach. We got our tents up by 7, cooked dinner, and were just sitting around, soaking in the quiet, when we heard it. Footsteps. At first, we thought hikers on the trail a short distance from camp, maybe 30 yards. We could see the glow of headlamps bobbing through the trees. 6 or 7 at least, moving in a single file. Weird, but not impossible. Trails sometimes stay open after dark, and hikers occasionally misjudge their pace. Marcus glanced at his watch. "Evening walkers," he said. "Kind of late, though, almost 11. We called out a casual, friendly greeting. "Beautiful night for it." Nothing. Not a word. The lights kept moving steadily. And then we noticed it. Their steps were synchronized. Almost too precise. Mechanical. 8 hikers stepping in perfect lockstep, identical stride, identical rhythm. We watched until they disappeared down the trail and tried to shrug it off. But 30 minutes later, we heard them again. Same synchronized rhythm, same lights, approaching from the same angle as before. Jenny sat up, tense. "That's weird. Did they turn back?" The trail in that section was out and back, ending at a scenic overlook about a mile past our camp. If they'd reached it and turned around, they'd be coming from the opposite direction. But no, they approached from the same angle as before, still moving in the same direction. Somehow, they'd circled back without us noticing. Marcus stood and called out, "You folks okay? Need any help?" Silence again. The headlamps passed, motionless communication. None. I counted 8 lights, evenly spaced. I tried to get a closer look as they neared, but the combination of darkness and forward-facing beams reduced them to moving silhouettes. "Something's wrong here," I muttered. "Who hikes that big a group in silence at night?" No talking, no responding. We decided to stay alert, but not panic. Maybe some silent meditation hike. Or headphones. Weird, but not deadly. We settled around the camping stove, one eye on the trail. The third passage came at 1:30 a.m. Jenny shook me awake, hand over my mouth. "They're back," she whispered. "Same group, same direction." I crawled out and joined her and Marcus. Sure enough, 8 lights, perfect formation. Footsteps still mechanical. This time I timed them. Same duration to pass our camp as the previous encounters. "This trail's straight," Marcus whispered. "No loops here. To pass us 3 times from the same direction, they'd have to hike out to the overlook, circle rough terrain, and get back behind us. That's impossible." "Maybe there's a hidden connector trail," Jenny suggested, voice shaky. But even she didn't sound convinced. As they passed near our firelight, I finally got a closer view. The lead hiker had a backpack with a bright yellow rectangle and red text. Couldn't read it from here, but it was distinct. "Snap a photo," I told Marcus. He fished out his phone and hit night mode, trying to capture something. The lights moved on. By 2:15 a.m., all 3 of us were wide awake, fear creeping in. Same 8 figures,
Same synchronized steps, same unholy rhythm. But now something new. They stopped. All 8 froze in unison, motionless. 3 full minutes. Headlamps forward, silent, unblinking. Then they turned together, 8 beams illuminating our camp. We froze, caught in that light like deer in headlights. Faces unreadable, obscured behind the lamp glare. Nothing hostile, nothing curious, just empty. After a minute, they turned forward again, continued walking, same rhythm, disappearing down the trail. Jenny whispered, shaking, "We need to leave. Now. This isn't normal." But we were 2 miles from the trailhead, and the only path out was the one they kept repeating. Too dangerous to try passing them in the dark. We stayed at camp, keeping a watch rotation, planning to leave at first light. The 5th passage came at 3:45. Same pattern, same impossibility. 8 identical steps, same section of trail, looping endlessly. When they stopped this time, one raised a hand. A slow, deliberate wave. The others copied, all 8 moving in perfect synchronization. Greeting? Mockery? Something else? We didn't know. By 5:30 a.m., just before dawn, the 6th passage arrived. The pre-dawn gray revealed their details for the first time. Every single hiker wore identical clothing, identical packs, identical boots. Not just similar, they were exact clones down to every strap and buckle. And faces. Same face repeated 8 times. Not relatives, not twins. The same person, existing 8-fold, walking the same trail over and over. They stopped again. 8 identical expressions. Blank, lifeless eyes staring straight at us. Then, they smiled. Exactly the same smile, spreading across all 8 faces simultaneously. And they spoke, 8 voices in unison, harmonizing in a strange, eerie tone. The trail goes in circles. We walk it every night. Welcome to the loop. Then, without moving farther, they reached a bend and simply vanished. Not faded, not walked out of view. Deleted from reality, like someone had switched them off. The sun rose. We packed silently, hiking out as fast as we could. At the trailhead, we reported what we'd seen to a park ranger. Sounds insane, but we had to document it. The ranger listened, took notes, and then dropped a chilling truth. We weren't the first. Multiple groups had reported the same night hikers over the years. Different trails, different campsites, same phenomenon. 8 identical figures walking in perfect lockstep, passing the same trail sections multiple times, sometimes stopping, staring, waving, or speaking. The ranger pulled up old reports, spanning 15 years. Teams were sent to observe. Sometimes sightings happened, sometimes nothing. No pattern, no predictability, just relentless, looping presence, existing outside normal rules. Marcus showed the ranger the photo. It captured our campsite, trail, firelight, but no bodies, no figures, only glowing orbs where headlamps had been. The image betrayed no physical form, only the light lingering. We left Crater Lake that day, never to return. That experience haunts us still. We rarely speak of it, even between ourselves. To acknowledge it fully is to admit reality is far stranger, far more fluid than we dare believe. Somewhere out there, 8 identical figures continue walking the same trail each night, looping endlessly, trapped in a rhythm they cannot escape. And sometimes, they notice you. Sometimes they wave. Sometimes they speak. Sometimes,
They invite you to join. I think about that invitation sometimes. What would have happened if we'd stepped onto the trail? Would we have merged into the loop? Become additional instances, walking in perfect synchronization with those 8 figures, trapped in eternal repetition? I do not want to know. Some trails don't lead anywhere. They just circle back endlessly. And whatever walks them is no longer bound by the normal rules of space, time, or individuality. The night hikers are still out there, still walking, still looping, waiting for someone new to join their endless, shadowed circuit through the mountains. Story 6. My name's Amelia. I'm 27. What happened to me at Crater Lake National Park in Oregon a couple of years ago completely flipped my understanding of reality. I was on a backpacking trip with my 2 best friends, Marcus and Jenny. Both are seasoned hikers, and we've spent years trekking the Pacific Northwest together. We've faced storms, gotten lost for hours, survived rough nights out, and that trust we've built is the only reason I'm confident what we saw that August night wasn't some mass hallucination. We had permits for a backcountry site along the Crater Lake rim, about 2 miles from the nearest trailhead. It was midsummer, warm days, cool nights, skies so clear the stars felt within reach. We got our tents up by 7, cooked dinner, and were just sitting around, soaking in the quiet, when we heard it. Footsteps. At first, we thought hikers on the trail a short distance from camp, maybe 30 yards. We could see the glow of headlamps bobbing through the trees. 6 or 7 at least, moving in a single file. Weird, but not impossible. Trails sometimes stay open after dark, and hikers occasionally misjudge their pace. Marcus glanced at his watch. "Evening walkers," he said. "Kind of late, though, almost 11. We called out a casual, friendly greeting. "Beautiful night for it." Nothing. Not a word. The lights kept moving steadily. And then we noticed it. Their steps were synchronized. Almost too precise. Mechanical. 8 hikers stepping in perfect lockstep, identical stride, identical rhythm. We watched until they disappeared down the trail and tried to shrug it off. But 30 minutes later, we heard them again. Same synchronized rhythm, same lights, approaching from the same angle as before. Jenny sat up, tense. "That's weird. Did they turn back?" The trail in that section was out and back, ending at a scenic overlook about a mile past our camp. If they'd reached it and turned around, they'd be coming from the opposite direction. But no, they approached from the same angle as before, still moving in the same direction. Somehow, they'd circled back without us noticing. Marcus stood and called out, "You folks okay? Need any help?" Silence again. The headlamps passed, motionless communication. None. I counted 8 lights, evenly spaced. I tried to get a closer look as they neared, but the combination of darkness and forward-facing beams reduced them to moving silhouettes. "Something's wrong here," I muttered. "Who hikes that big a group in silence at night?" No talking, no responding. We decided to stay alert, but not panic. Maybe some silent meditation hike, or headphones. Weird, but not deadly. We settled around the camping stove, one eye on the trail. The third passage came at 1:30 a.m. Jenny shook me awake, hand over my mouth. "They're back," she whispered. "Same group, same direction." I crawled out and joined her and Marcus. Sure enough, 8 lights, perfect formation. Footsteps still mechanical. This time I timed them. Same duration to pass our camp as the previous encounters. "This trail's straight," Marcus whispered. "No loops here. To pass us 3 times from the same direction, they'd have to hike out to the overlook, circle rough terrain, and get back behind us. That's impossible." "Maybe there's a hidden connector trail,"
Jenny suggested, voice shaky. But even she didn't sound convinced. As they passed near our firelight, I finally got a closer view. The lead hiker had a backpack with a bright yellow rectangle and red text. Couldn't read it from here, but it was distinct. "Snap a photo," I told Marcus. He fished out his phone and hit night mode, trying to capture something. The lights moved on. By 2:15 a.m., all three of us were wide awake, fear creeping in. Same 8 figures, same synchronized steps, same unholy rhythm. But now something new. They stopped. All 8 froze in unison, motionless. 3 full minutes. Headlamps forward, silent, unblinking. Then they turned together, 8 beams illuminating our camp. We froze, caught in that light like deer in headlights. Faces unreadable, obscured behind the lamp glare. Nothing hostile, nothing curious, just empty. After a minute, they turned forward again, continued walking, same rhythm, disappearing down the trail. Jenny whispered, shaking, "We need to leave. Now. This isn't normal." But we were 2 miles from the trailhead, and the only path out was the one they kept repeating. Too dangerous to try passing them in the dark. We stayed at camp, keeping a watch rotation, planning to leave at first light. The 5th passage came at 3:45. Same pattern, same impossibility. 8 identical steps, same section of trail, looping endlessly. When they stopped this time, one raised a hand. A slow, deliberate wave. The others copied, all 8 moving in perfect synchronization. Greeting? Mockery? Something else? We didn't know. By 5:30 a.m., just before dawn, the 6th passage arrived. The pre-dawn gray revealed their details for the first time. Every single hiker wore identical clothing, identical packs, identical boots. Not just similar, they were exact clones down to every strap and buckle. And faces. Same face repeated 8 times. Not relatives, not twins. The same person, existing 8-fold, walking the same trail over and over. They stopped again. 8 identical expressions. Blank, lifeless eyes staring straight at us. Then, they smiled. Exactly the same smile, spreading across all 8 faces simultaneously. And they spoke, 8 voices in unison, harmonizing in a strange, eerie tone. "The trail goes in circles. We walk it every night. Welcome to the loop." Then, without moving farther, they reached a bend and simply vanished. Not faded, not walked out of view. Deleted from reality, like someone had switched them off. The sun rose. We packed silently, hiking out as fast as we could. At the trailhead, we reported what we'd seen to a park ranger. Sounds insane, but we had to document it. The ranger listened, took notes, and then dropped a chilling truth. We weren't the first. Multiple groups had reported the same night hikers over the years. Different trails, different campsites, same phenomenon. 8 identical figures walking in perfect lockstep, passing the same trail sections multiple times, sometimes stopping, staring, waving, or speaking. The ranger pulled up old reports, spanning 15 years. Teams were sent to observe. Sometimes sightings happened, sometimes nothing. No pattern, no predictability, just relentless, looping presence, existing outside normal rules. Marcus showed the ranger the photo. It captured our campsite, trail, firelight, but no bodies, no figures, only glowing orbs where headlamps had been. The image betrayed no physical form, only the light lingering. We left Crater Lake that day, never to return. That experience haunts us still. We rarely speak of it, even between ourselves. To acknowledge it fully is to admit reality is far stranger, far more fluid than we dare believe. Somewhere out there, 8 identical figures continue walking the same trail each night, looping endlessly, trapped in a rhythm they cannot escape. And sometimes, they notice you. Sometimes they wave. Sometimes they speak. Sometimes, they invite you to join. I think about that invitation sometimes. What would have happened if we'd stepped onto the trail? Would we have merged into the loop? Become additional instances, walking in perfect synchronization with those 8 figures, trapped in eternal repetition? I do not want to know. Some trails don't lead anywhere. They just circle back endlessly. And whatever walks them is no longer bound by the normal rules of space, time, or individuality. The night hikers are still out there, still walking, still looping, waiting for someone new to join their endless, shadowed circuit through the mountains. Story 8. My name's Harper. I'm 25. And what I went through on the Washington stretch of the Pacific Crest Trail last September still haunts me. It shredded everything I thought I knew about people, trust, and how predators think. I was doing a solo through hike of Washington's section, about 500 miles, which I planned to tackle in roughly a month. It was late in the season, shoulder time, when most hikers had already finished. The trails were quiet, almost eerily so, which was exactly what I wanted. After a rough year, I needed solitude, time to think, to reset, to figure out my next move in life. I first ran into them on my 4th day, at a creek where I stopped to refill my water bottles. A couple, probably in their late 30s, were there, filtering water. On first glance, they seemed normal. The guy, tall, fit, his gear pristine and new-looking. The woman, smaller, quiet, with older, beaten-up equipment. They introduced themselves as Mark and Lisa, section hiking and out for about a week. We exchanged the usual trail chit-chat, how far, where I was heading, how I was handling the elevation. But something about their conversation felt off. The guy, Mark, asked really detailed stuff about my schedule, my planned campsites, whether anyone knew my exact route. Way too specific for a casual trail meeting. "So you're completely solo?" he asked, smiling, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Nobody out here with you at all?" "Just me," I said, keeping it light. "I like it that way." "Brave," he said. "These trails aren't safe for women alone. You must be experienced." Lisa barely spoke, focused on her water filter, eyes down. Every time she glanced at me, there was something. Fear, warning, maybe both. I couldn't read it. I filled my bottles fast and moved on, trying to put distance between us. But the feeling didn't leave. It crawled under my skin, whispering that something wasn't right. I hiked hard for the next 3 hours, nearly 8 miles, before finding a decent campsite. As I set up my tent, I heard voices on the trail. Mark and Lisa were there, hiking straight into my camp. My unease spiked. I'd been pushing hard, keeping a fast pace on tough terrain. For them to catch up, they had to be moving unnaturally fast. "What a coincidence," Mark said cheerily. "Looks like we had the same campsite in mind. Mind if we set up nearby?" I did mind, but I forced a casual tone. "Sure, no problem." I positioned my tent with a clear sightline to the trail and a quick exit. That night, sleep didn't come. Mark kept wandering past my tent under flimsy excuses. Lisa watched with those haunted eyes, whispering to Mark whenever I stepped out, stopping abruptly if I noticed. My gut screamed at me to change my plans. At first light, I took a side trail, diverging from my original route. I moved fast, covering 6 miles by mid-morning, breathing a little easier. Then I saw them again. Same creek, same spots. Mark called out, using my name. I froze. I hadn't said my name aloud, ever. "Fancy seeing you here," he said. "We thought this route looked better, more scenic." My blood ran ice cold. There was no way they could have gotten ahead of me. The side trail branched off 3 miles back. To intercept me, they either anticipated my every move or crossed through impossible terrain in the dark. Both options terrifying. "How do you know my name?" I asked, voice sharp.
"You told us yesterday," Mark said, smooth, almost soothing.
My memory protested. I knew I hadn't. I never gave my full name on the trail, never shared personal details. He was gaslighting me, making me doubt myself. I refilled my water and bolted, leaving without another word. Later, I met a middle-aged solo hiker going the opposite way. "Did you pass a couple, man and woman, late 30s, blue backpack on the woman?" I asked. He shook his head. "Nope. A few solo hikers, but no couples." How could he have missed them? They should have been right there. Over the next 3 days, the pattern continued. No matter where I went, no matter how fast or how I changed routes, they were there. Always friendly, plausible, always probing about my plans, my family, who knew my schedule. By day 5, I met another solo female hiker, Rachel, in her 30s. I described the couple. Her face went pale. "Be careful," she whispered. "There are rumors. A couple preying on solo women hikers. People have disappeared." "Disappeared?" I repeated, stomach dropping. "3 women last year," she said. "All solo, all remote sections, all seen with a couple matching that description. Authorities are investigating, but it's mostly trail gossip. Still, persistent." I agreed to hike with her group. 2 guys in their 20s joined, making me feel safer for the first time in days. That night, Lisa showed up alone. Her face bruised, clothes messy, terrified. "Help me," she whispered. "He's not my husband. My name isn't Lisa. He abducted me 6 weeks ago near Portland. He forces me to lure women, make himself seem harmless. You have to get me out." Before we could respond, Mark appeared, knife in hand, calm, precise, his friendly act gone. One of Rachel's hiking partners, a former Marine named David, stepped between Lisa and Mark. "Knife down, back away," he said, voice steady. Mark paused, sizing up the situation. 4 of us, 1 of him, all witnesses, phones ready to call for help. His advantage was gone. Mark bolted into the trees, disappearing into the shadows. We immediately made Lisa sit, offered water, food, and tried to calm her racing heartbeat. David ran toward the nearest ranger station, 3 hours away, to call in our location. The rest of us stayed put, keeping watch. Lisa, her real name was Michelle Torres, told everything. 2 months earlier, she'd been hiking near Portland alone when Mark approached, claiming his car broke down and asking for help. When she agreed to walk back with him, he grabbed her, restrained her, and forced her into his vehicle. He'd spent months roaming the Pacific Northwest, targeting solo female hikers at remote trailheads. Michelle had been his bait, making him appear harmless to his next victims. Once he isolated them, he abducted them. She had seen 3 other abductions, threatened that trying to escape would mean immediate death for herself and the others. Law enforcement arrived within hours. Michelle gave her statement. Mark's real name turned out to be David Keller, a suspected serial killer on the run for 3 years across multiple states. His vehicle was discovered 2 days later at a remote Forest Service road. Inside were restraints, weapons, duct tape, and, most chillingly, driver's licenses from 7 women spanning 3 states. Keller was captured a week later trying to cross into Canada. Michelle was reunited with her family and entered intensive therapy. Thanks to her information, authorities recovered the remains of 4 victims, buried in remote areas throughout Washington and Oregon. I finished the PCT section with Rachel and her group. I couldn't bring myself to hike alone anymore. The trail didn't feel peaceful. It felt like a hunting ground. Predators understood isolation made people vulnerable. That realization changed me forever. I now hike in groups, check in constantly with family, and trust my instincts when something feels wrong. The encounter rewired how I see the world. The danger isn't always wild animals or treacherous terrain. Sometimes it's someone who looks friendly, someone who seems helpful, someone who uses trust against you. The predator's advantage is invisibility, and it often comes wearing the same gear, walking the same trails, and speaking the same language of trust. Every time I hike now, I carry Michelle's story with me. I remember the faces of the women whose licenses were found in Keller's car. Their families got some closure, but nothing can bring them back. The wilderness remains breathtaking, but beneath its beauty is a sinister reality. Predators adapt. They learn the trails, the patterns, the isolated spots, and use that knowledge not to survive, but to hunt. Michelle saved my life by risking everything to speak up. Without her, I might have been his next target. I share this story with every female hiker I meet. The lesson is brutal but necessary. No matter how safe a place seems, no matter how friendly someone appears, always assume vulnerability. Solo hiking requires vigilance, instinct, and an awareness that danger can walk beside you, smiling, carrying a backpack, pretending to belong. Even now, months later, I replay the encounters in my mind. The way they appeared at every creek, every campsite, like shadows tracking me. The sickening familiarity of their invasive questions. The knowledge that someone so calculated, so patient, had been operating for years, right under the noses of hikers and volunteers alike, makes me shiver. The horror isn't just in what he did, but in how he manipulated trust, how he weaponized social norms, how he turned kindness into opportunity. I still hike. I still love the wilderness. But I never go solo. I never share too much. I always keep my phone ready, my location known, and my instincts sharp. Predators like Keller don't hide in the dark. They blend in with the light, the ordinary, the everyday. They wait for isolation, for trust, for moments when humans let their guard down. This experience reshaped every aspect of my approach to wilderness travel. It's taught me to respect my fear as much as my curiosity, to value company over solitude in uncertain areas, and to never, ever assume someone is who they claim to be. The beauty of the forest is intertwined with its dangers, not just the natural ones, but the human ones lurking behind smiles, casual greetings, and seemingly innocent trail encounters. Sometimes, late at night, I think about what could have happened if Michelle hadn't taken the chance to tell us the truth. I think about the women he kidnapped, the fear they faced, the terror of being hunted in a place that's supposed to be sanctuary. I think about how close I came to becoming another statistic. And I feel an unshakable resolve. Vigilance saves lives. Awareness saves lives. Sharing these stories saves lives. The trail remains. The mountains, the streams, the forests. They're still magical, still worth exploring. But the lesson stays burned into my mind. The predators adapt. They watch, wait, and use every opportunity the wilderness gives them. The most dangerous ones don't lurk behind trees. They walk beside you, carrying a pack, talking casually, blending in, waiting for the moment you feel safe enough to drop your guard. And that moment is all they need. I carry that knowledge now. Every step I take in the wilderness, every rustle of leaves, every shadow on the trail reminds me, beauty can hide terror. Kindness can hide threat. And the mountains, as majestic as they are, can also be arenas where predators hunt under the guise of the familiar. Story 9. My name's Samuel, and I'm 32. My wife, Lily, is 30. We've been hitting the Pacific Northwest trails together for nearly a decade, racking up hundreds of miles, battling storms, scrambling over jagged terrain, and surviving everything nature could throw at us. We thought we were untouchable. We were catastrophically wrong. Last September, we planned a 3-day loop around Mount St. Helens National Monument for our anniversary. The trail looked easy on paper, moderate, marked, straightforward. We arrived Thursday morning, checked in with the ranger, and set off, expecting a calm, celebratory hike. Day 1 was a dream. The volcanic landscape stretched before us, jagged peaks and smooth lava fields bathed in sunlight. Wildflowers nodded in the breeze, and old-growth forest pockets stood untouched by the 1980 eruption. By 5, we hit our first campsite, set up our tent, cooked dinner, and watched the sunset splash the mountain in blazing oranges and purples. Everything was perfect. Day 2 started fine. We broke camp at 7, following the trail exactly. GPS confirmed our route. But by noon, déjà vu hit hard. We passed landmarks from the previous day, a lightning-scarred twisted tree, a jagged rock with a strange carving on top. How could this be? We must have turned the wrong way, Lily said, pulling out the map. But the map didn't lie. The trail markers were correct. The GPS was spot on. Yet the terrain repeated itself, like the mountain had a twisted sense of humor. We pressed on, trying to rationalize. Maybe volcanic landscapes look similar in multiple spots. By evening, we arrived at our supposed Day 2 campsite and froze. We were back where we'd slept the night before. Tent holes still scarred the dirt. Fire ring rocks were exactly as we'd left them. This doesn't make sense, I muttered, checking the GPS again. We'd hiked 12 miles today. We should be miles away. Reluctantly, we set up camp again. Both of us were rattled but clinging to logic. Maybe map error, GPS glitch, a visual trick. We'd figure it out tomorrow. Day 3, desperate to escape the loop, we abandoned the marked trail and headed due west, compass and sun guiding us toward a Forest Service road 12 miles away. We bushwhacked if needed. 10 miles, 8 hours, brutal terrain, fallen logs, thorny brush, loose rocks, but we kept moving. Then, as the sun sank, we stumbled into a clearing. The campsite. Day 1. The twisted tree, the jagged rock, the old tent holes. Lily broke down crying. Panic rose in my chest, but I forced it down. This was impossible. Compass bearings, straight line, 8 hours of relentless movement. We should not be here. We're trapped, Lily whispered. Something unnatural was holding us. We set up camp for the 3rd night in the same clearing, barely speaking, minds unraveling. That night, I noticed fresh markings on the twisted tree, numbers etched into the bark. 147 days still walking. Do not follow the trail. Someone else had been trapped here. Someone else had been stuck for months. Day 4. We tried north, plunging into dense forest, bushwhacking 15 miles through brutal terrain. Night fell. We were back at the same clearing. Day 5. Day 6. Each day a new route. We hiked at night, followed creek beds, climbed to ridges. Always the same outcome. same clearing. Our food dwindled. Lily stopped sleeping, insisting we were dead and trapped in some purgatory. I almost started believing her. By day 6, I noticed a strange pattern in the trees, a subtle spiral radiating from a central point roughly a quarter-mile from our camp. An old volcanic vent, a deep hole rimmed with jagged lava rock. Hiking closer, I saw dozens of trail markers, some ancient, dating to the 70s, all pointing back toward our clearing. "What if we go down instead of out?" I asked Lily. She looked at me like I'd lost it. Maybe I had, but nothing else worked. Normal solutions failed. Perhaps an abnormal solution was needed. We prepped our gear and descended the vent with climbing rope. Lily first, then me. The slick walls were cold and damp. The drop was longer than it looked, nearly 60 feet. At the bottom, a horizontal lava tube stretched into darkness. No choice but to follow it. Hours of crawling, twisting through tight passages, our headlamps cutting through total black. The tube climbed, dipped, turned. Finally, light. We emerged on a hillside 2 miles from our original trailhead parking. The forest looked normal. GPS coordinates made sense. We ran to our car, collapsed in exhausted relief. Phones revealed the impossible. 19 days had passed. 19 days. We'd experienced 6. Somewhere in that loop, we'd lost 13 days. Time had fractured. Search teams had scoured the trails for 2 weeks without a trace. We tried explaining, but our story sounded insane. Photos on our cameras showed 6 days of camping in that exact spot. Rangers found the volcanic vent, the trail markers, and even followed the lava tube, emerging at the same hillside exit. Yet distances didn't add up. The campsite, if it existed, should have been visible from the vent rim. It wasn't. Beneath the old carving on the twisted tree, something new had appeared. Our names, Samuel and Lily, with the number 19 carved underneath. We hadn't touched that tree. Yet there it was, tracking our absence in real time. Lily's smartwatch confirmed it. 147 days of activity compressed into the 19 days we'd been gone. Time had layered, folded, compressed. The loop kept its own record. We later found an obscure hiking forum. 16 other people had similar stories: volcanic loops, impossible navigation, time discrepancies. Hikers who vanished, trapped in warped pockets of space-time until finding an exit. We have not returned to Mount St. Helens. We won't. That area exists under rules humans can't understand. Volcanic forces created something beyond rock, zones where space and time bend. Trails loop endlessly. Days stretch and collapse. We still hike, but we research every route. We avoid volcanic regions. We pay attention to missing hiker reports. We survived something that others hadn't. Some trails are not trails. They are loops, time traps, spaces where the mountain decides your path and your schedule. And for a moment, I can still feel it. The clearing, the spiral trees, the echo of time folding over itself. Even now, months later, I still wake with that gnawing sense of being watched, trapped in the loop. Lily feels it too. That patch of forest, twisted trees, jagged rocks. It isn't just a place. It's a machine. A predator disguised as a mountain, folding space and time around anyone foolish enough to wander there. After we escaped the vent, we tried to resume normal life. But hiking never felt the same. Every path, every ridge, every trailhead held a whisper of that impossible clearing. Even simple walks through the woods made our stomachs churn. We checked and rechecked GPS devices, maps, compasses. Nothing ever felt certain again. We pored over the photos and GPS logs from that trip. Day 1 to day 6, our bodies were exhausted, yet the footage showed nearly triple the movement. Step counts, elevations, distances, it didn't match our perception of time. The cameras were ruthless witnesses. Each frame, each data point screamed that something had rewritten reality while we were walking. One night, as we reviewed the logs, I noticed a faint anomaly in the metadata of the photos. Subtle shifts in shadows and light that shouldn't have existed. Some trees seemed to appear and disappear between shots. Rocks shifted slightly. Our tents seemed to have changed orientation just enough to unsettle the mind. It was like the forest was alive, moving around us, folding in on itself. We couldn't sleep. Lily kept muttering about echoes of steps that weren't ours, whispers in the wind, shadows moving along the far tree line when nothing should have been there. I tried to rationalize it as post-trauma hyper-awareness, but deep down I knew better. There was a hunger in that place. A malevolent intelligence tied to the volcanic terrain, feeding on disorientation and fear. We went online, diving into forums and obscure posts from hikers who had vanished, or nearly vanished, in similar volcanic regions. Names, dates, coordinates, descriptions all lining up with strange patterns. Each story involved loops, lost days, and places that seemed to exist outside normal geometry. Some had vanished for weeks and returned with no explanation. Others never returned. The common thread was clear. The mountains weren't just dangerous. They were traps, bending reality to claim time and sanity. One particular post chilled me. A hiker named Aaron described entering a volcanic crater near Mount Adams. He'd counted 3 days, but when he returned, 14 days had passed in the outside world. He swore he'd seen figures carved into the trees, names and numbers, tracking each trapped person's stay. That sounded familiar. Too familiar. The loop we experienced wasn't just about being lost. It was predatory in nature. Not a person hunting, but the land itself, warping space and compressing time to wear down anyone foolish enough to enter. And the spiral pattern of the trees? That was the signature of the trap. The mountain had a way of directing hikers toward the vent, toward the tube, toward the exit, but only if it chose to let them go. Otherwise, the loop repeated endlessly, a living maze with teeth. Months after returning, we visited our local ranger station. We asked about disappearances in that volcanic region. Rangers exchanged uneasy glances. "People go missing," one said quietly. "Sometimes for days, sometimes weeks. Never anything explainable. We chalk it up to rough terrain, weather, human error. But, yeah, some areas feel off." They didn't laugh. They didn't shrug. There was fear in their tone. They knew. They'd seen it. We started documenting our hikes differently. Every step, every elevation change, every campsite photographed. But even that felt hollow. The loop had taught us that reality was subjective in those volcanic zones. Our instruments could lie. Time could betray. Distances could fold back on themselves. Nothing was reliable, except instinct and terror. Sometimes, late at night, I replay the lava tube descent in my mind. The walls slick with condensation, the oppressive darkness pressing in, our headlamps slicing thin beams through black. The feeling of crawling endlessly, uncertain if the tunnel would ever end, was inhuman. Not like fear from cliffs or bears. Something deeper, primal, designed to make you lose touch with reality. Lily remembers the same terror, the same sense of being measured and manipulated by the very earth beneath her hands. We know we were lucky. Very lucky. The vent gave way, the tube ended, and we emerged in daylight. But we also know others were not. Every carved name, every number scratched into bark, told the story of people who had entered, wandered, and been consumed by the loop. Those carvings weren't graffiti. They were records, maintained by the mountain itself, marking prisoners and survivors alike. Our sleep remains haunted. Sometimes, in the quiet hours, I hear a twisted version of the wind through pine needles, a voice, faint, whispering our names, drawing us back. A part of me feels that if we ever return, the loop would claim us again, no matter how experienced, no matter how prepared. The mountain remembers. The vent remembers. The spiraling trees remember. We still hike, but we avoid volcanic terrain entirely. We stick to well-trodden, surveyed paths. We check in constantly with friends and family. We travel in groups now. The wilderness still has beauty, but beauty hides danger that isn't obvious. Predators aren't always animals or people. Sometimes, the predator is the earth itself, twisted, ancient, and patient. We sometimes hear reports of hikers disappearing in similar areas, vanishing in Washington, Oregon, Idaho. Trail maps show open wilderness, but witness accounts suggest something else. Folds in space, days lost, endless loops. It's all too familiar. Each story we read, each forum post, feels like a warning. A signpost pointing toward the same impossible truth. Some areas are alive. They trap. They consume. They record. Lily and I have kept our experience private. Mostly. Only close friends and fellow hikers know the full story. But sometimes I write it down, hoping it will serve as a warning. Trails that seem safe can become cages. Days can stretch, collapse, and multiply. Even a single misstep can place you in a loop that no map, GPS, or compass can escape. And sometimes, in the pitch black of night, I swear I feel it. The pull of that clearing, the spiral trees, the vent calling. A memory, a tether, a trap waiting for the next unwary hiker. We escaped, yes, but the mountain still watches. It still remembers. And it's patient. It has all the time in the world. The Pacific Northwest is stunning. But in the shadow of its volcanic peaks, I've learned this truth. The greatest danger is not always visible. It doesn't roar or bite. It waits. It folds reality around you. It records your presence. And sometimes, it lets you go. Just to laugh, knowing you'll never forget it.